Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and can you tell how careful I'm being about my new tablecloth? I'm trying to keep it clean. That's funny, right? I got some stuff out here. Some foods that I took out of the freezer a little while ago. It's been thawing just to enable this chunk of stuff to more easily flake apart. Got a couple other things here too. A soiled napkin. I've got my little supply of grit, what's left of it. I've got more, but I think we got plenty enough for feeding right here. We're going to be checking in on our 45-day-old African nightcrawler systems. 45 days kind of makes the systems among my younger systems. And in my wormery, the younger stuff is what ends up down on the floor. All the older stuff starts out on the top shelf, and I gradually work my way down. So the newest stuff ends up down here. The bins that we're going to be working on are this one right here, is where the worms are. And then the other one that we traditionally check in on when we're checking on the worms is the cocoon-nursery, which is really just the castings that they left behind after we relocated the worms 45 days ago. The idea there is that eventually the cocoons in that material will hatch and we'll have baby worms, but it might be a little bit early for that still. So I'm going to put a glove on and we're going to get to work. So the check-in on the cocoon nursery usually doesn't consist of much else than just making sure that the moisture levels are okay. And then if needed, I've got my water bottle here. We can squirt the material down a little bit and then put the plastic coverings back on the way you see them here to try to hold the moisture down within the system. I don't know, sometimes I wonder if the check-ins on these cocoon nurseries are worth the effort. It's not very interesting just looking at a bunch of stuff that looks like dirt. And it might be interesting over time to see the babies emerging. But after 45 days, I'm thinking, you know, if there are baby worms in here, they're probably pretty puny. It would actually be kind of nice to start seeing some. Kind of makes me wonder if I should put out a little, just a little bit of food out into the middle of the material so that if there are baby worms here and they stumble on that, they'll maybe just stay there. We'll get a little glimpse of them the next time we check in. I did see on another channel, maybe on Dee's channel, the setup of one of these nurseries, and there was a little treat left for them, a little bit of submerged food, just in case they wanted a bite to eat. So why don't we try that, why not? I got a whole bunch of food here that's going to go for the adult worm bin. We'll leave a little care package here for the babies, and we'll see what we get. Maybe next time there'll be some babies hanging out down here in the middle. I usually don't bother with that, I usually just run these cocoon nurseries as is and assume that all the leftover materials within the bin, all these little scraps of bedding and probably food chunks and stuff, are all satisfactory to take care of the worms' needs. But if we want to catch a glimpse of them, it probably is a pretty good idea to put out a really, tempting little pile of stuff. Maybe we'll actually start observing some babies in here soon in one of the next check-ins, next few check-ins. Who knows? Next check-in might still just yield nothing. Moisture, in the past I'd gone through here sort of revealing a layer and then spraying down some and then backfilling that and back and forth, piling in a bit of water, but somehow today it didn't seem necessary, which is good. So why don't we just leave it as is now to continue, especially with that little treat that we put in there. That in itself is going to bring a little bit of moisture into the game, and we'll let this continue as is. Looking good so far as I could tell, I hope. Let's get the other bin out here, the one with the adult worms in it. Okay, very similar looking, same plastic covering, slightly larger container, but not by much, a little bit bigger. And let's see what we end up with in here. So now this is the bin that I referred to as getting a lasagna style feeding. And the lasagna just really means that the feedings are being put in here with layers of bedding in between little bits of food. I see a worm here, I see a couple over here. And I see some castings, trails, maybe some spots where there's little concentrations of water collecting, some dew. Well, some dew that would normally just continue to evaporate and vanish into the air. But luckily our plastic covering captures that dew. Man, I'm always amazed at how well these pieces of paper hold up. But you could definitely see how this one is getting some tears and even some holes. But if it's possible, we'll keep going with it, I think. It's almost like a little game I like to play, you know, just to see how long I could care for these hunks of paper. Eventually they all just end up becoming bedding anyway, or, you know, carbon food source for the worm bin. But why not try to make a little challenge out of it, right? So this too, another hunk of paper. Let's get all this uninteresting paper out of the way so we can get into the interesting paper, which is the cardboard layers that make up this so-called lasagna arrangement. If I remember correctly, we did have kind of a rearrangement. There was like 4 layers in the past, 4 small layers. Last time we kind of spread it out more, so there was only 2 layers. Side by side, we took the stuff that was previously stacked one on top of the other. So it's been changed a little bit, and, you know, in the interest of making it larger overall. So I think if we want to excavate down to the first layer, I guess we'll probably, we'll be burning our way right through the first layer of food that was stacked up on top of that that layer of cardboard. So the cardboard layer is right here below what remains of some of this pumpkin and coffee. I see. Okay. So they're working it. You can see each piece has a good number of worms working their way through the stuff. There are leftovers here too. Good amount of worms coming out to help with the cause. It's over here too. I guess it extends all the way to here. Felt like the whole floor was moving. I guess my aim here is to try to preserve the integrity of these pieces of cardboard so that I can reconstruct these layers using the same pieces of cardboard, which are at this point 28 days in the making. 4 weeks ago was when we initiated the first lasagna arrangement of this bin. Like I said, it was a little bit smaller but taller, so it got reorganized a little last time. So this first layer should be these two, I think. Did I leave a piece of this one behind? Just as these all these little guys. This is just a hunk of leftover pumpkin right there. So I just sort of peeled off a layer of food with worms in it. And what was left? Was there? Oh, this just seems like a part of the layer. Some of it over here. Or is this actually? I don't know. Sometimes I have a hard time reassembling some of these layers because it seems like their bits and pieces end up scattered a little bit. So whatever, I think we'll treat that as 2 recovered layers on top of or beneath which, now that they've been removed, there would have been a little bit more food piled onto the next layer. So let's keep digging, see what's going on here. I guess that's the fun part, is that as you reveal the next layer, there's hopefully going to be a little bit of a worm party happening in there. I'm just having a little bit of a tough time finding where the cardboard is. I figured I would kind of try to scoop down low and then it might reveal itself. I think this might be a piece of it. Alright, pretty good size. You know what it was? Now I remember. We had actually come in here with some extra material and we built up the layers a little bit. So besides just the original reused recycled cardboard layers, we were bringing in some of these sheets of extra paper. They're just coffee filters. So we did in a way almost extend the area of one of the layers with coffee filters. Now I'm remembering. That's why somehow these chunks seem large in a way, bigger than they were when we started a week, last time we were in here. And it's because of this. Here we go. This is just the coffee filter. It looks like I might not have even unfolded it. I just threw it in as is. No, I probably unfolded it. So right here's another piece of just coffee filter that was meant to help boost up the layers a little bit. And today I figured, we'll use this napkin here to do the same. But it's not much, not as much as we did last time. 2 coffee filters versus 1 napkin. Well, it might be pretty close. Alright. At this point I just figured no more cardboard layers that we need to carefully extract. We can just sort of wholesale scoop out material to make a little bit of room to rebuild here. See if we can go all the way down, right to the bare bottom of this bin. Let's see, how shall we, oops, dropping some stuff here on my nice clean tablecloth. Gotta be careful on the edges here so I don't spill stuff. Alright, so one idea that I had is right here on the table. We were holding it a moment ago, which is to use some of this old stuff. And something I've been doing lately is using my old feeding zone indicator, usually a coffee filter, which is what this coffee filter here was doing, I believe. And, using the new coffee filter that comes in with the feeding, this one here, as its replacement, letting this one turn into bedding. I kind of thought that some of these coverings, despite our attempts and, kind of little game we were having trying to keep this stuff together, maybe we can even use some of this stuff to build up our layers a bit. I don't know, I figured if any of it was so gone that it would just sort of tear off under its own weight, then we could maybe do that to it, but it's holding up well enough that maybe we should respect it and let it continue at its current duty as a top covering. I think it can still hold up for maybe one more round. So yeah, it's deserved it. We'll let it keep going and see how it does for one more feeding at least. So either way, we were able to at least salvage a little bit extra bedding material in the form of one more coffee filter. I'm just wondering what we can put on the bottom layer. Maybe just a couple of these fragments that we recycled. Save some of these bigger ones to sort of rebuild layers with. I just like to have some sort of a little bit of a foundation to start layering the foods into. And then I think, hopefully, I've allowed enough time for this stuff to thaw sufficiently for me to just grab handfuls of it. I think you can probably see what this stuff is. It's carrot. This is all carrot peel for the most part. This is some other sort of soup green or veggie. This is all the peels of that, I believe. So that's a pretty nice little first layer. Let's start emptying out this coffee filter so that we can recommission it at the end as our feeding zone indicator. This white stuff I'm sprinkling in is pulverized eggshell. It's the grit that I use. Now we can start rebuilding some of these layers, I think. I keep wanting to put these oldest pieces down, really down in a place where they've got to, work hard to work against the onslaught of worm traffic. I really want to challenge them, So I like the idea of having them right down there where there's food right below it and there's going to be more food right on top of it. So, after 4 weeks, they're doing great. They're holding up, but I'd really like to see them continue to break down. And, in between the layers, it's always a popular spot, it seems. I don't know if we had a chance to check in between this one. Oops, I don't want to tear it all apart. So let's press on here, continue as we were. Now that we've got another layer here, I believe we can go right back for another scoop of stuff to pile into this layer. And I think maybe here we can introduce this. Maybe I should have done it later. Saved it so I can wash my glove off using it. Nah, doesn't matter. We'll just season it up a little bit there by cleaning my gloves with it a little bit. Make that into sort of a new extra additional layer. We've still got a little bit here. We're going to have to be careful not to run out if we still want to create a couple more layers. So let's sprinkle in some more veggie and perhaps use this as a chance to deplete our coffee supply down here in this layer. Not bad, not bad. Now, maybe, let's see, I don't know, is it time to start? Oh, no, here's another chunk of this cardboard. Cool. So we can definitely make another full cardboard layer in here. Also in a spot that I believe is going to put it into a pretty challenging spot. Trying to continue to hold up against the worm traffic. But yeah, you can definitely see that the stuff's holding up pretty good. I just feel a little bit bad putting this frozen stuff right on top of these little worms here. Maybe the other side of it has fewer worms. This other side has like residual coffee stuck to it. And worms in it. Oh boy. Okay, let's see if we can just evict some of them, and then maybe that'll be the job of this coffee filter here, to insulate any worms that came on with those cardboard chunks and protect them from some of this chili food going in on the top layer. I guess here we can drop in a little bit more grit. And at this point, you know, maybe I'll deplete what I've got remaining here and go reload. But at this point, it's really just a matter of covering up, I believe. We'll tear this open and use it as an indicator to show us where we last set up our lasagna layer. But you know what's kind of missing to me in a way? A top layer, one that we sort of encounter in the beginning. It doesn't get a lot of traffic because it's just a cardboard layer with food only beneath it, nothing on top of it. Perhaps a little bit of this stuff sprinkled on top. What do you guys think about maybe putting in a nice fresh layer right on top? And then we'll cover it with all this material that we excavated. And now we get to pit this new piece of cardboard against the older pieces that have had 4 weeks of advanced time to get broken down. And we'll see how the new piece holds up against the onslaught of the worms. Like I said, up here on the top layer, I don't think it's going to get as much interest as if it were down lower where all the foods are. But at least this way it'll start to get impregnated with some of the juices and some of the microbes and bacteria and whatnot that occupy this bin. Start making that stuff nice and cozy, and perhaps on a future check-in we'll be able to get it down deeper or get it more heavily exposed to some food items and start boosting up the interest so that the worms can start breaking that down as well. Very cool, very cool. All right, let's use this coffee filter here right in the middle, indicating for us exactly where the last feeding was in case we have trouble finding it. I don't know why I feel like I gotta mock myself a little bit on that every time. It does seem a little bit silly. Although, you know, sometimes when you do somewhat more elaborate feeding patterns, like I've done in the past where I've gone from corner to corner, every feeding's different from the last. There it does help to, you know, mark where you last fed. And that'll always help you zero back in on where the last feeding was administered. And it's also interesting because if you keep it in a consistent pattern, you can also revisit even older feedings to see how they're progressing. Kind of like almost like a little time travel, time capsule sort of feeding approach, which I definitely find interesting. I've done a couple times. And even here, this lasagna feeding pattern is a little break from the norm. So here too, just having a little bit of fun with the somewhat routine work of feeding the worm bins. Well, you know, perhaps this piece of newspaper was given a little bit more credit than it deserves. Or maybe I was just a little bit overly rough with it. But I got a feeling I think I know what's going to happen with this piece of newspaper next time we come in here. Can you guess too? All right, everyone, that's pretty much it. Let's get this thing covered up because we're done here. Hopefully you enjoyed a little check-in with the now 45-day-old African nightcrawler system. Going 28 days now with the lasagna style feeding. Initial feeding plus now the third reload of the lasagna layers. Always putting in a little bit of extra stuff, but still having a chance to see how the original stuff in there, those 4 sheets, are continuing to break down. So that's pretty interesting to see as well. Not to mention what's in between the layers is usually pretty cool to see too. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please remember to leave me a thumbs up. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Take care.